You gotta get the famous crawler shot, right? No driver. Think the wife's freaking out in there yet?
Dude, we're totally crawling. And no one is driving.
Are you freaking out in there, man?
There's nobody driving!
So today's episode is a little bit bittersweet, I guess. So this Danny Bonaduce project has been a little bit of a trial. It just seems like there was a lot of unnecessary steps. So a little bit of a gap, I think, in the filming here, just because this is a little bit of a marathon. I just kind of wanted to like push through and get this dealt with. Let me think. I'm pretty sure I just kind of left off with like the interior stuff. What I can show you is interior wise, we got these panels all in there hooked up, and yes, they're not exactly the right ones, but that's what it is. Interior wise, this is later model 4Runner interior. So you saw the rear seats already, but all that stuff's in. We ended up doing the new buttons, little switch buttons in there. And the other thing I ended up doing was we had to do a new dome light. These are still actually available. I think the only thing I haven't showed you on video is we got the stick boot all painted up and installed properly. I went back and added a piece of sheet metal underneath the tunnel right here. These boots were kind of flailing and I didn't really like that. And the other real big treasure that I ended up scoring was the elusive altimeter, inclometer altimeter. Strangely enough, the altimeter ended up coming from the dude that we bought this truck from. So that's a little bit of the update on the interior. Actually, I guess I didn't show you this guy too. The console was kind of cached, so I ended up cutting the other piece out of the console and giving a mount for the switches. So one of the biggies on these 4Runners is to make sure that the rear window works, because these really suck if the window doesn't work. The tailgate, you already saw me go through it, so the tailgate went gone through. It got the new cables in there. One of these cables was damaged, so I figured I'd get another one. Those are also still available. The rear wiper on these, yeah, honestly, this rear window, rear wiper thing is kind of like, it's overcomplicated and it makes this thing kind of a pain in the ass. So if you're not familiar with the way these tailgates work, there's power control box up front and the switch. But what goes on is there's safeties in this tailgate arm, like wherever this arm has to be parked in a certain spot for the window to work. Okay. This door latch right here, there's a switch on the door latch and the tailgate that has to be closed for it to work. There is a top bolt that goes through, like right here, this bolt. actuates a switch that has to be activated for the window switch to work. I obviously had put the top on last because that's just kind of how this project went. It makes it a lot easier to work on these things without the top in the way. So I got the top all on there, new wiper, got the motor, got everything plugged in, and then I spent the day chasing the rear wiper thing. Ended up being a broken wire in that wiring harness that runs under the seat, of course. So the seat had to come back out. That panel was all the way out. Like I said, I just kind of spare you that stuff because it's mostly me just cursing and working slowly, and no one really wants to see that. So the other big thing that I ended up doing was went ahead and did this SR5 stripe. Now, those of you who are familiar with actual era of Toyota realize this is not the correct stripe for this rig. And you would be right. This would be the stripe you pull off an 81 to 83 truck. I had laid out the actual correct SR5 84, 85 stripes, and I was just really tired and kind of having a problem with layout. So in the interim of me tearing that all off and going crazy, and then the wife was like, oh, I kind of like these stripes better. And I was like, oh, sweet. That'll be a much easier project for me to do. I think they turned out pretty good. I'm not a painter by any means, but this is like multiple layers of masking and unmasking and spraying, and like I said, I think it turned out all right. It's not perfect by any means. Like, there was some spots where I'm just impatient, so it does have like a few flaws where the mask got into it. Thought about doing like a deal right here since we don't have the badging or anything right there. But unfortunately, I spent a couple hours like laying that out and relaying it out, laying it out and drawing it and relaying it out. And I couldn't ever get anything that I thought looked appropriate, I guess I want to say. I was going to, I think the closest thing I was going to end up doing is like reduplicating what's on the hood in that little section of the tailgate. But the problem is with the tailgate, that section is so small compared to like the decals, and you have to scale it way down, and it makes it just didn't make it look right. As it is, I think the scale on these turned out pretty good. Overall, I have been happy with it. So I have spent the last couple of weeks of getting some test drives in and getting miles logged and trying to like debug anything that was weird or that I missed. And so I had driven it a tiny bit and we got that piece on the rail fixed from my friend that welds up the street. Came back, I had left just a shitload of hardware loose, so I had to go back through and retorqued and Loctited the entire suspension, the shocks. I ended up having a little bit of a fitment issue with the Pitman arm, as it turns out. Ended up getting a little bit too tight up in there, so I had to like do some finagling to make that work right. Found a couple little wiring issues I had because of the automatic manual wiring. The fuel pump relay wasn't wired right, so I had to get in there and change that around. And then, of course, had to add the light wire for the altimeter thing. I think, frankly, that's about it. I really didn't have any issues with the motor or startup or the tranny. On the initial test drive, I had the two-wheel, four-wheel drive stick kind of popped out, but I think I had knocked it halfway out or something when I was playing with that boot, because I've got several hundred miles on it and don't have any issues since then. I did, unfortunately, driving around, the other one of these fell off somewhere, so that's kind of a drag. Those unfortunately are not available through Toyota anymore, so I think you may be able to get like 80 series, or excuse me, like a 60 series Miro or something through Toyota still, which may be like a good option for this guy. As far as like interior wise, everything went back together. I ended up finding had a guy come over and bought the brown parts out of this, and he ended up bringing me the extra headrest, a couple vents that I needed. Another little quickie thing I ended up doing here was these TRD wheels. This wheel cap I cut down to hide the lockout, so we have like a nice finished look on that wheel. This is what the cap looked like before. So this is a separate piece. What are we doing? This piece right here is separate. This little piece comes off, and then you just cut it out and it works. These tires they feel really good. I've been pretty happy with them. They're super smooth going down the road. They aren't really too loud. So definitely an option if you're looking for the whole like tall skinny thing. These aren't exactly tall, they're like a 30, these would be considered a 32 on a 17 to 235 80 17. These measured 31 and a quarter on the car. What else? Yeah, I just been kind of like knocking out a bunch of the little nitpicky stuff that was going to that, you know how it is, 10% takes 90% of your time. Not really, but okay. So here's the upgrade I recently made on the other truck. So these old school wipers screw to the arm. So you've got the wiper, you've got the screws, this little metal adapter piece, and then the wiper blade like snaps into that. Okay, so I don't know really what was going on with that, but they're just a terrible design. I pulled these off the other truck because I had a stick go through here and it ripped the wiper off and it totally ruined it. On the 89, I put 3rd gen wipers on there that have the J arm, and then I went to like the Rain-X blade. It doesn't have any holes or release for sticks to grab on and stuff. So this one it's just another part I didn't want to chase. Yes, I could have done that on this one. These are actually their original wiper arms, and that metal adapter piece is actually the original one from the 85. So that ended up kind of getting restoed and putting back in here. I had updated the wipers on this truck and one of my other trucks a while ago, and that metal piece is different. I don't know if it's flimsier, it's just updated stuff. So when I bought these wipers through the Steeler again this time, last time they came with the screws and that adapter and all that shit. This time they did not. So I don't know if my guys are just a slack jaw or these are not through Toyota anymore. So if you are having a problem with this wiper business, just update to the 3rd gen 4Runner wipers, and then you can run the J hook. It just makes your life a hell of a lot easier. So this color of the cap is the color of the lightest stripe. That was the method to my madness there. I just think it gives it it's a unique look. You know, the rest of the paint on this was pretty hashed, and I ended up doing the sweet patina sauce on it to kind of, I don't know, to sauce it, I guess. It's a little bit of a shame that things kind of went down the way that they did. Jessica got some seat time in it and likes it, of course, because it's pretty hard not to like these trucks. You know what I mean? Aside from the like 68 horsepower things, these are probably easily in the top 5 ever built. Just this generation of truck in general. We could do a quick recap on the pieces that went into it, I suppose. Do a quick little walk around on that. So I guess let's do that. What we'll do, we'll just start at the front and move our way back. I will come back to the engine compartment for you. Underneath, what we did here is we kept the solid axle, the stock 85 axle housing. Top of that axle housing, we went with the Dobinson 2-inch leaf springs. So it's the leaf springs, all their pins, their shocks, U-bolts, all that stuff. A very complete kit. It was pretty nice. We end up going with the IFS box conversion for the crossover. So we've got the box, Sky's Pitman arm. This is the old OG All-Pro Off-Road crossover kit. So this would have been like, this is literally from the late 90s. The other thing we ended up doing is going to the big brake kit. You can buy this caliper adapter plate, and we're running the plate, and these are 3rd gen 4Runner 12-inch brakes. Okay, so that's a 12-inch rotor and the appropriate caliper. The other piece to the front end that we ended up doing here is, so this is like what your shackles and stuff look like. I swapped the front diff for a later model V6 style diff, and we put the super limited slip carrier in there. Training and transfer case is obviously it's 20, just basically a very basic stock 22 RE, and really the only thing we did to it was the header. Okay, so the transmission is a 3-liter V6 transmission with a turbo bell housing to adapt it to the 4-cylinder. As we move back, we have the Marlin crawler adapter plate to go to the gear drive. So twin gear drive cases with the Marlin adapter. Sky's off-road dual case cross member. And the exhaust comes back off that LC header. It's 2 1/4 inch stock cat, mandrel bends, Magnaflow muffler. This rear drive line is a 3rd gen 4Runner double cardan that was shortened to fit. I had to custom drill that flange. And to the rear axle is a 86 to 88 rear housing. It has an early 27 spline E-locker. That's a Marlin crawler guard. So basically the rear axle is entirely stock. Again, Dobinson springs and shocks. All the brake hoses are adapted from later model Tundra stuff. Okay. All right, so as mentioned, under the hood we are basically completely stock. This motor ended up being 30 over and a 030 grind. Like I said, LC Engineering header. For the brakes, we updated to, this is like a 92 to 95 master and booster setup. So it's got the dual diaphragm and it's a larger diameter master cylinder. Otherwise, everything under the hood ends up being just as stock as possible. This is an AC vehicle as well, so the AC is in there, and I think it's just a little bit low. So all right, other than that, I'm pretty sure all the sheet metal on this is good, is original. So again, interior wise, we just picked this up out of like a 87 and later interior. Just got like the faux stitching right here is how you can tell the later model. This ends up being the original headliner, the original sun visors, the original A-pillar plastic. Everything else in here has been swapped out for the later model stuff though. This is a later model steering wheel. The E-locker switch in the stock position. E-locker computer can live down here on the boot. And then the only other thing is the Rad Designs triple shifter. This ended up being pretty cool. Not super convenient to pull in and out, but it gets it done. I think that is basically your walk around description. Like I said, the original intent of this vehicle when we first bought it was so Jessica could have something to drive when the weather got shitty. We were both working full time and kind of like at different ends of the valley, and she had that Genesis. So we bought this, and then just, you know, life does life stuff. So here we are, this is like a 5.5 year long project about. So, I mean, it's a project that ultimately did get finished, which is more than we can say about a lot of other projects, I guess. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this build. Hopefully you have been able to take something away from it, learn some things. Hopefully I've been able to show you some things you didn't know, or things that will be useful to you in your build or your job or whatever you are messing with.
That wraps up another episode of Snale Racing.
Thank you for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe. There he goes.